everyone, Aimer back with another Mission Impossible episode review. This time we have got from the Revival Season 2 Episode 6, which is called War Games. So this one starts out in the Eastern European country of Sardavia, and it's quiet and calm for a few seconds, but we then quickly cut to scenes of tanks, paratroopers, general war mayhem. A general in a war room is enthusiastically giving orders, while a Captain Suchek near the front wonders why so much live ammunition seems to be being used, as though it were a real war, and he tells Colonel Garva that he is going to get to the bottom of it. The colonel calls the general and informs him of the captain's approach, visible on the battle display in the war room. The general orders rocket fire on the captain's jeep with predictable results. Jim gets his instructions in a Rolls Royce after some spy speak with the driver. The mission: the general is Eli Zabos, who is suspected of planning an invasion of neighboring oil-rich Bukharain over the wishes of his government, and it's suspected he has hidden missiles to launch the attack. In the apartment scene, we're told that the captain who was killed was an American agent, and Zabos is a firm believer in astrology, like his war hero Hitler, so Shannon is planning to go in as an aristocrat from the old regime who is also an astrology expert. And Jim says that the army is only 24 hours away from the border, so they'll need to move fast. Jim and Nicholas arrive in Sardavia as UN observers with Grant as their official driver. Countess Shannon also arrives at their hotel, acting bossy to establish herself and calling Garva, telling him that she was contacted by Suchek, who gave her some interesting information, and she wants to meet with Zabos. Zabos is somewhat unfazed at the news, telling Garva to deal with the Countess any way he has to. At the base, Jim and Nicholas talk to the general about his apparently aggressive plans and are shown the elaborate battle display, which Nicholas records with a neat pen camera. And Max infiltrates the facility by cutting through the barbed wire, but is somehow discovered and thrown into the brig. The general waves off the IMF's implications about potential aggression by denying that he has the missiles that would be needed to carry it out. Shannon talks to the press briefly about what she implies Zabos is doing, and gets picked up by Garva and his men, while Max is interrogated, claiming he just got separated from his battalion. Max gets a brief reprieve and is able to use a device to signal Grant that he's in trouble, alerting Jim when Zabos leaves to talk to Shannon, who tells him he's getting very bad astrological advice and that she knows about his real plans for tomorrow's war games. Grant finds Max and is able to blast him out of the brig, escaping back to their car where Max hides in the trunk. But a lieutenant hears the trunk close and demands that Grant open it. Jim and Nicholas come out and are outraged that their car is being searched, but Zabos also demands that the trunk be opened. It's found to be empty, with Max hiding in a false compartment. The IMF sets up at an abandoned farmhouse near the base, where Grant amasses the impressive footage Nicholas captured. Zabos summons Shannon later that night, demanding to know how anything could possibly go wrong when all the stars are in his favor. Shannon laughs that he's using a discredited system that's only used in women's magazines. He's headed for disaster. He demands that he give her a proper reading and full information to save her life. And she does so, telling him that Suchek told her that he found his missiles and disarmed them, visibly worrying the general. Nicholas comes back as a soldier to the base, dropping Grant off on the way in so that he can get to the war room and climb into the back of the battle display, while he and Max head around the base to look for the missiles, but don't find anything. Fortunately for the plot to proceed, Grant overhears Zabos tell Garva what Shannon told him. So Grant is able to tell the others to follow him, which they do, seeing Garva activate a door leading to an underground tunnel where the missiles are stored. Grant also overhears Zabos tell Shannon that he intends to make sure she ends up on the battlefield so that she won't live to tell her story. Garva reports that the missiles are still intact, so Zabos gleefully says he'll proceed as planned. Max and Nicholas get down to the missile area and, with Grant's instructions, disarm them, and then find Shannon being handcuffed to a jeep, so Max goes underneath it to hitch a ride and follow them. It's dawn, so the war games commence, with Grant having tapped into the computer. Jim and Nicholas arrive for their observational duties, and Zabos is supremely confident, of course, glad to have cameras there to witness history, as he deems it. The missile trucks roll out. Shannon is left in her Jeep, and once the other soldiers depart, Max hops in and starts driving away, but is spotted by Garva, who alerts the general. Zabos orders rockets to fire on the Jeep, but Grant is able to divert them towards Garva's position, indicating on the screen, though, that the Jeep was destroyed. Now, without a concern in the world, Zabos drops the charade and tells Jim and Nicholas that he's been lying the whole time and is ready to take over his neighbor's oil fields. The display shows the missiles hitting their targets, but Grant, in actuality, has activated their self-destruct mechanisms. Zabos gets in front of the cameras, addressing the people of both nations and declaring himself the new leader as government leaders watch. Jim tells Zabos that perhaps he should take a closer look at what's really going on, and Grant shows the actual display, indicating that nothing has happened at all other than wargame maneuvers, sending Zabos into a hissy fit. The IMF make their exit, reuniting with Max and Shannon as the government leaders arrive to arrest the general. Mission accomplished. I'm going to give this episode a grade of a D-. There really is nothing good or unique here. Visually, it's okay, I guess, but nothing we haven't seen before. And the only thing I can say about it is that, yeah, some of the visual effects are okay. Not all of them. Some of the stock footage is really, very, very ordinary. And, much of the episode is very ordinary, as I'll cover. I guess that this was just supposed to evoke some memories of the 1980 War Games movie with the visual display and all of that kind of stuff. This one is not an embarrassment like an episode, say, like The Devils from last season, but it's just really bad. And if it wasn't a Mission Impossible episode, I cannot imagine that I would ever watch it. I have no desire to go back and watch it again. And I seem to recall from back in the day that this one was one that was frequently put on reruns. Like next week, that we'll be showing you this episode. And it's like, why? It's just not a good one. It's a very, very cookie cutter plot. There's no new ground covered here at all. To me, the overarching thing is that everything is so contrived and disjointed in terms of the plot. There's very little difficulty here. There's what I call faux difficulty or false difficulty, where Max seems to be at risk because he got caught, and Shannon is at risk because, she's going to be put on the front lines or whatever. But it really doesn't end up meaning anything. And typically when the writers and producers do that, it's because they really don't have anything else, in terms of difficulty related to the actual mission. So they actually have to put one of the IMF members at some physical risk or risk to their lives, or so it seems. And that's what's happening here. Let's talk about the things that are just bad. First of all, right from the beginning, they kind of Godwined the episode in the apartment scene by invoking the fact that Zabos believes in astrology, that Hitler is his war hero, and that sort of thing. Let me just cut to the chase when it comes to Zabos. He's a lame schmuck. We can see that very, very quickly. I don't find him engaging at all. So I would declare that he has all three kisses of death for an IMF villain. And for the writers to say that, hey, we're going to dump more on that, which was really just unnecessary and superfluous and egregious. Making him believe in astrology so that he can be even more easily manipulated. Okay, making him say that Hitler's his war hero, none of that is really necessary. Just what Zabos does in the episode is enough to establish him as a lame schmuck. So I just think that piling that on, it just is a microcosm for the episode, in that, hey, we have to do something, so let's just dump more on him. That's how I feel. As with most episodes of the revival, there is a lot of really, really poor unnecessary dialogue. There's a point where there's some really, really bad cabbaging dialogue by, the bad guys, as well as the IMF telling us things that are completely obvious, like, oh, we're definitely going to win this war now, and we fooled everybody. Stuff like that just really bugs me. Again, just like the stuff I just mentioned with Zabos and the extra characterization, which was unnecessary, this was also very, very unnecessary, and there's more here than usual as well. Now let's talk about the plot holes, and boy, there's quite a few of them. First of all, right towards the beginning, when Shannon makes her appearance and starts implying that she knows something that is going to cause problems for Zabos. Zabos tells Colonel Garva to do whatever he needs to make sure that Shannon, doesn't cause a problem. He doesn't even say to bring her to the base or anything like that. He just tells him, deal with it. So Garva goes to get, to deal with it, apparently, with a group of guards. And then we see Shannon talking to the press that she knows something and that Zabos is a bad guy and that sort of thing. And then Garva decides to kind of grab her, put her under arrest, and take her to the base. I mean, not that this could actually happen for the purposes of the show, but wouldn't the more sensible thing to be to just have Shannon kind of quote unquote disappear and say that, oh, we don't know what happened to her? I don't know. Like, that could have happened, right? I just kind of don't see that, which would have been an important plot detail. They put in all of this other unnecessary stuff about Zabos and other, ridiculous dialogue. Couldn't there have been something there where Shannon tells him that, what, you better take me to Zabos because I have information that he needs to know. You better not hurt me or else you guys are going to be in big trouble because I've told people this or I've told people that. I've already spoken to the press, that sort of thing. And I, there should have been something there. Even if it was just a statement by Zabos saying that, what, we can't afford to have any bad publicity right now. You have to bring her here. We have to keep her under wraps until our invasion actually takes place, and then it's not really going to matter. That is kind of what they end up doing in terms of the plot, so that actually does kind of make sense. But I think it would have made more sense if they took just a minute, less than a minute, a few seconds, just to establish that with some dialogue, which actually would have meant something instead of the unnecessary dialogue that doesn't really mean anything. Some other things that are plot holes, and then I'm going to kind of bring it all together here. Grant is able to get into the war room and climb into the panel and get behind the display. And I cannot for the life of me fathom why the war room is empty. There's no guards inside or anything like that. There's not even guards outside. You would think that Zabos, now maybe it's just because he's supremely overconfident or whatever, but you gotta have all these freaking guards outside the door to the war room, wouldn't you think? Also, Nicholas and Max are able to wander around the entire base, basically, without being seen. It is nighttime, and, obviously they're agents and they know how to get around, carefully and things like that. But, gee, that to me is kind of stretching it a little bit. Another thing that I wondered about, why didn't Nicholas take his camera pen with him to when they found the missiles? That way Grant could kind of see what was going on. Instead of having Nicholas relay messages, over audio back and forth to Grant like they did in the episode The Plague. Wouldn't it be nice if Grant could kind of actually see what was going on for himself? They have that technology with the pen display, obviously, and he had it in the war room earlier. I just think that was kind of lame as well. However, all of this kind of pales by comparison when I realized the real fundamental flaw in this very flawed episode. Other than Grant getting into the space behind the display and being able to mess with the military computer and pull off the chicanery with that in order to fool the general about what was actually happening. Was any of the other stuff that was done in the episode really necessary to complete the mission? You could argue that maybe, Shannon's distraction of Zabos, was a little bit meaningful. I would debate that a little bit. It just seems that other than that, like once Grant got there and was able to mess with the computer, what's the difference? Everything else that happens in the episode just completely seems like filler. It did before, and this I think just really establishes it that they had this one thing that really needed to be done, but in order to turn it into a 1 hour show, they had to put all of this other stuff around it as window dressing. And that is really, really bothersome. Even finding the missiles was kind of pointless. They have this whole elaborate thing. We've got to find them. We got to find them. We got to find them. But Grant was able to just make them self-destruct when they are launched. Now, there's no implication that these are nuclear missiles or anything like that. Where the IMF would have to be really, really careful because there would be some kind of fallout or something like that. Even in a situation like that, having them self-destruct wouldn't avoid, a potential issue with fallout. But it doesn't, that was really irrelevant. If Grant is able to divert them or control them from the computer, what does it matter if the IMF finds them or diffuses parts of them or whatever? Again, maybe something's missing there. Maybe the steps that Nicholas and Max had to take in order to mess with the missiles were necessary so that Grant could, divert them or whatever. But again, there's no dialogue as such, which actually could have been important. Instead, we get the stupid cabbaging dialogue, which, I don't need to keep repeating myself about that. The whole point of what I'm saying is that everything to do, except for that one aspect of it, getting Grant to where he needs to be at the key point, is really filler. And none of the things that the IMF does really kind of establishes the path for getting him into that room. It could have been done without any or most of the things that the IMF did in this episode. And that is where the whole thing kind of falls apart for me. Just to wrap this up, in terms of a callback, I was thinking of the episode The Astrologer from the original series because, again, the beginning of the episode just talks about that so much. That really is not a good callback for this one because it really doesn't have anything to do, the episodes don't have anything to do with each other. I think the better callback is the season 3 episode from the original, which is called Nitro, where the IMF fools a general and another military guy from 2 neighboring countries who are about to sign a peace treaty, but they want to actually profit from the war. And the IMF fools those 2 guys into thinking that their plan has succeeded. And so, they do it in such a way that now they think that, oh my God, now we are at physical risk because the plan is succeeding. And so that forces them to kind of take steps to undo their plan and implicate themselves by doing it. I really think that that's a better callback because the big part of that episode was a nitroglycerin heist by the IMF, where they steal nitroglycerin from a facility. And I commented in the review of that episode that was supposed to generate a lot of suspense, but that did not come off well. And, unlike in this episode where, as I mentioned, all of the other stuff other than Grant's part of it is filler, that was actually somewhat important to the plot. But again, that plot was one that just kind of didn't come together, and the episode was really, really lacking. It really stood out as a bad episode in season 3, which had a lot of really great episodes. And that's what this reminds me of the most. And I think that's it. Shorter review than most, just because there's not a lot of good and bad to point out here. It's really kind of one-sided. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. Please like this review video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And please leave your comments about this and other episodes. I will be back soon with some more reviews and some other extras of lists and things like that I have been thinking about. And I'll see you with that really, really soon. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.